Okay, so here's a simple analogy. Consoles are to gaming what iPhones are to the smartphone industry. Let's talk about why. So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a little bit of a detour away from PCs, though we are going to be referencing them and talk about the upcoming consoles, specifically the PlayStation 5. Of course, this is an original PlayStation 4. I've actually had it since before it launched, courtesy of one of those Taco Bell giveaways where you get the console before it launches, which was kind of comical that I was one that ended up with one of these because this thing doesn't see much gaming time. Regardless, I'm going to be referencing a CNET article because they were actually talking with a Sony representative ahead of E3 here, which E3 is not going to be an event that Sony's taking part in this year. But regardless, Sony still gave CNET some details about the upcoming PlayStation 5, some storage details, some refresh rates, actually supporting higher refresh rates than just 60 FPS. And also sort of giving us some details about what Sony hopes to accomplish in the transition period between the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, because that's usually a little bit of a nasty time to be a console gamer, where you're still stuck with an old system to play all your old games, but you need the new system also hooked up at the same time for any of the new games, and it really is a penalty on those early adopters because they're stuck with a very limited game selection from the get-go with none of the real big benefits of the brand new console, because maybe a lot of their friends aren't quite on that new console yet either. So let's start with storage. The Sony representative that was talking with CNET here is Jim Ryan, who is the CEO and president of the PlayStation division of Sony. So we can basically take his word here as gospel of what Sony at least hopes to accomplish with the launch of the PlayStation 5. So with storage here, it looks like Sony is actually going to be offering an SSD solution with the base model of the PlayStation 5, which would be an absolute first for Sony, and to my knowledge, an absolute first for the console industry as a whole, at least outside of maybe some very minor consoles that may be floating around out there. Definitely mainstream console gaming, this would be a first for, and this is a really big deal because we actually are going to get high-speed storage, which should cut down a huge amount on loading times for games. So consoles should finally be moving into the modern world here, where we can actually get games to load quickly and avoid longer load screens, something that a well-built PC has been experiencing for a long time. And even at this point, SSDs have become so cheap that you can even fit them in budget rigs. In fact, I've been putting together a roughly $300 build, which is going to be a very capable gaming PC that I'm going to be showcasing off later once it's actually built. And that thing features an SSD boot drive, though admittedly it does also feature a mass storage drive, being a hard drive, to give me a little bit more storage for games. And I'll be very interested to see just what the capacity of the SSDs being offered by Sony here in the base model are. Something tells me, or at least I'm going to go ahead and take a swing at this, I'm going to guess around that 500 gigabyte mark is going to be the base model, though I definitely expect Sony to launch a whole host of options in that regard where you can buy for a little bit more money. Hopefully it's a little bit more, hopefully it's not a lot more, but for a little bit more money I imagine you can get a much larger SSD, though fingers crossed that they offer a 1 terabyte SSD as the base model, because that would be awesome for gamers to be able to pack more games on their game console and have them actually launch reasonably fast. Now, Ryan also mentioned that 4K visuals would be supported up to 120 Hz on the PlayStation 5, and this is where I need to throw out a big fat asterisk, or it's just something to sort of give gamers a heads up. Chances are really strong that the vast majority of games on the PlayStation 5 will not run 4K 120 Hz. It is almost certain that AAA games, especially single player ones that aren't meant to be available to a whole host of configurations hardware wise, I'm guessing though that that is mostly going to be supported on shows, maybe certain streaming services, though I don't really know that many use 120 FPS in general, and lower end games, those indie games that are just very easy to run. Tetris, for example, which obviously not so much an indie game, but a very old game, would run great at 120 FPS at 4K. I imagine though the top games, your modern AAA games, are going to trade off some FPS to get more eye candy. So it would be really nice if they could hit 4K 60 FPS in most titles, but the current console generation Sorry, guy. Hasn't really inspired a whole lot of influence in regards to consoles being able to pull off higher refresh rates. They're still trying to get 60 FPS down, much less 120 at 4K. So I'm very skeptical that many games are actually going to take advantage of that. Regardless, it is nice to see that there's at least support for 120 FPS, even if developers don't choose to take advantage of it all the time. And the last big thing that came out of this CNET interview, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the transition plan that Sony seems to have from the PlayStation 4 through the PlayStation 5, in that it looks like Sony is actually trying to maintain some semblance of backwards compatibility. They're going to call it cross-generational compatibility, where you're actually going to have all your friends list moved over. You're not going to obviously have to establish new accounts or any of that sort of thing, but if there are games even that support multiple generations, so likely I would imagine Fortnite will have a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation 4 version, it looks like you'll be able to play between the generations. So if you want to team up with somebody on a PlayStation 4, for example, it looks likely that you'll be able to do that. Now, there's no guarantee, and to be perfectly clear here, there's no guarantee that Fortnite will have a cross-generational platform or will be on the PlayStation 5, though I absolutely can't imagine a world where Epic decides not to put Fortnite on the PlayStation 5. But any game that seems to support multiple generations of the platform will likely allow you to play games with people on the older generation. That is, Sony servers won't care which device you're actually playing on, it just cares that you're playing on a Sony device. Because I also can't imagine a world where Sony is just happy to accept you playing with other people on different platforms altogether outside of Sony's ecosystem, but at least within Sony's ecosystem, it looks like they're going to be trying to maintain that compatibility between the 4th gen PlayStation and the 5th gen PlayStation, and hopefully we do see that supported from developers as well outside of Sony's in-house developers. So that's the transition plan, and the reason that I made my analogy at the very beginning of this video is really simple. iPhones are just coming out with features that we've had on Android for a long time, and I know this is gonna make people very upset to hear, but things like swiping on your keyboard, that's been around forever on Android. So the way I look at all these console announcements and some of these things, the 120 hertz, the SSD at launch, the cross-generational play, these are all things that PCs have had for a long time, and I told you I would circle back around to talking about PCs a little bit. This is one of the keystone reasons that I think the PC platform is so much better than console gaming, is its ability to adapt to different environments. You can put it in the living room, attach controllers to it, you play it basically as a console, you can put it on a desk setup and use a keyboard and mouse, you can kind of use it however you want, and you maintain that superior backwards compatibility or cross-generational compatibility with everybody else on PC. And as I like to try to demonstrate from time to time on this channel, it's not actually an expensive endeavor to build a pretty solid gaming PC that'll get you up and running and playing extremely high fidelity games at a very cost-effective budget. So that's sort of the latest that we have here on the PlayStation 5. Again, I'll link that article down below so you can read through it. It is a good read. Whether you're a console person or not, it's very interesting to see what the consoles are doing in the upcoming generation. But of course, I do want to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole console wars or on the war between PC and consoles. What do you think about the upcoming news about these upcoming both Xbox and PlayStation 5 generations? Let me know your thoughts down below. And of course, if you like the video, hey, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the subscribe, notification bell. All those things help out the channel a lot. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.